Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Greenfield Conservation Commission at 6:31 p.m., February 25th, 2025. This meeting is being recorded by the Conservation Commission. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Quick roll call. Kristen?
Aye.
Erica?
Aye.
Emily will be joining us in about 10 to 15 minutes.
You need to turn off your speaker.
We are dealing with some speaker issues here real quick, so please bear with us a moment.
There's a lot.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no, it's Wi-Fi. Disregard.
Maybe on the Zoom, just do the audio mute.
Oh. Yeah, down on
Do
the.
that.
Settings? Is the audio complete already? Maybe? Okay. That's at the very least, that just seems to have done the thing. Okay. See, so our first order of business is to minutes for February 11th. I'm not in the Zoom room. And I know I'm muted. Okay.
It's a learning curve.
It's it's the ghost in the machine. At any rate, approval of meeting minutes from February 11th, 2025. If we could get a, well, first of all, if folks want to take a look at those before we get underway, if they haven't already.
I don't know if it's my microphone that's giving the echo, but I will motion to approve the meeting minutes from our last hearing, which was the 11th. Is it right? Okay.
Okay.
I think that might be it.
How are we sounding now, Kristen?
Good. I don't sometimes there's an echo and it depends, like a person may have to mute themselves. So I wasn't sure if it was me or
We just updated one of our various microphones, so hopefully that works.
Yes.
yeah, it sounds good now.
We have like six
Oh, no.
There's another
6
one.
or 9
Oh,
mics.
Lord.
That'll
Between,
do
like,
it.
the computers and the.
Oh, jeez. Sorry, at any rate, we've got a motion from Kristen to approve the minutes from February 11th. Can we?
Second.
Excellent. Alrighty, barring any further comments on that. Let's go ahead and vote. Kristen, start with you.
Aye.
Erica?
Aye.
I am also an aye. The approved meeting minutes will become available to the public on our website on the next business day following this meeting. Theoretically, I don't know, is that something that we are able to reasonably accomplish?
Yes.
Yeah, right on.
Yes, I do it the following day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just noticed that statement for the first time. I was like,
It's new. Every time I submit an agenda, I get an update I need to make back from the city clerk. I think slowly they're like getting it completely to, what's the word?
code.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's now.
No public meetings or hearings today. But we do have some new business to attend to. And what I see here is the first thing up on the agenda is the property owner of 388 Coleraine Road is interested in selling a conservation restriction to their farmland, a parcel of 40.88 acres. This is in the exploratory phase and pricing has not been determined.
Yeah, so Keith Ross is here tonight. He reached out to me. He's from Landvest.
Mhm.
And he's here to discuss this in more detail.
Okay.
And I do have maps that he provided that I can bring up at any point.
Okay, excellent.
Well, yeah, why don't you pull up the map that shows the regional context, where it's located against other APR land, and I have it pulled up too if you want me to share my screen.
Here, I can do it.
Okay. So Mark Cruz inherited this property from his family, and he lives in New Jersey, and he's interested in conserving as much of it as possible. Now, there's a narrow 50-foot strip that goes back to his house there on the lower side of the property, and then there's some frontage above that accesses the land as well. So the property has been rented, to local farmers for a long time, growing a variety of farm products. And he lives in New Jersey, so he just, he comes up pretty often, but he'd like to see it conserved as much as possible. So we were thinking that it might be possible to put together a transaction with the APR program in the town and maybe Franklin Land Trust to conserve a lot of this farmland. If you go to the map that shows the regional context, it's
Is that
no,
where you
no,
hands out?
no. Yeah, where it pans out. There you go. So you can see where it is up on Colerain Road, and it abuts APR land already, and there's a lot of other conserved lands around it as well. So I know it's kind of early in the process. I was just wanting to find out if this is a priority for the Conservation Commission for this area of town to conserve farmland. And we'll get in touch with Michelle Padula, the APR person, to set up site visits once the snow's gone and you can see the ground. And we've been doing some initial planning that would help an appraiser come up with a value of the property. It's either going to have a through road, whether that driveway is 50-foot wide, whether it can be used as a through road to come out on the frontage on the other side, or whether it's just a stub road that would come up off that frontage on the other side, would determine how much development potential the property has. So I'm just interested to find out from the Concom if this is the kind of property that the town would be interested in seeing conserved.
I did an ArcMap screenshot that we could see the resources on the property. So the parcels outlined in pink. And you can see there's the flooding is the gray hatch marks. Wetlands are outlined in blue, the blue hatch polygons. And then there's Arms Brook with the riverfront in the green line buffer zones. To the northeast, that's obviously not part of the property, but that's getting into, I think, that pretty large riparian corridor.
Green River, yeah.
The Green River, so it's just across the street. You can see there's priority and estimated habitat just across the street. I don't know if you could see, let's look at some of those other, anyway, just to get like kind of one last glance at this. I zoomed out a bit because there's such a network of wetland and hydrologic connectors between them and that kind of branched through this parcel, which I thought was interesting.
Is that a cold water fisheries stream?
Oh, I'm not sure. Arms Brook.
Mm-hmm.
I
mean, I
Probably
think,
it's further up. I don't know if it is this far down, but I'm sure it is further up.
how do
well,
I
so
look
that's
that up?
a Mass GIS data layer. You can just pull that
Okay.
up. It's DFW cold water fisheries. But I think that, I think from our perspective, it's really important to see whether or not a site has public access and if it's contiguous with other open space, because it would form a larger protected area. I mean, personally, I would like to scoop up every offering we can get, but, I think that like our city agenda is to examine
So-
whether parcels are, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jessica.
Oh, well, I didn't mean to cut you off. Anyways, you can see across the street, there's Murphy Park,
Mhm.
Green River Conservation Area, Green River Swimming Area, Nims Tree Farm. So it is kind of, connected in that sense, just across the street. And then these other APR lands, there's actually quite a bit all right here. And then we can zoom out. So the other protected land, is in green, and the ag preservation restrictions are in tan.
So I feel like, personally, when trying to come up with, net benefit to rare species stuff, we always like to have conservation land that's contiguous with other conservation land, and this seems ideally situated. I don't know whether or not Arms Brook is a cold water fisheries, but that would be an extra thing to layer on. And it seems like there are a lot of resource areas. But the contiguous, I don't know. I just feel like that's huge. And if there's potential for public access, those are usually the two biggest things we look for, right?
Through the parking lot.
And just to throw it out there, that land donation is like kind of diagonally across Route 2 to the south from the other APR land, down here, this stuff, which will be hopefully, that's what we voted on. Do
Okay.
you see where my cursor is?
That'd be nice. to have it.
It's right here. These.
So, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say, does the owner have any, of what he wants, does he want it completely just passive recreation, or is he open to recreation, or what does he want?
He's interested in keeping it as farmland as much as possible. He has a house, at the end of that, you can see it on the map. There's a barn there, which he's been told is probably one of the oldest barns in Greenfield area. It's an old post and beam building that he's done some work on, and it's really nice. So that's the only area that he might be interested in keeping out, is the area around the house and barn. So he's willing to conserve the rest of it. And, if it's going to be farmed, not every farmer is interested in seeing the public hike over their property. But perhaps the APRs on the backside of it that are already protected, maybe there's some trails there that could be connected up with the frontage opposite the Green River area, and maybe a trail that goes along the boundary there that would link up with something on the other lands.
So we just have Emily Boss, our commission member, joining us right now, and she's really experienced with this, so maybe she can chime in on what this means. But I was under the impression that if it was like an Executive Office of Environmental Affairs Article 97 conservation restriction, that's not the same as an APR, but maybe Emily, you can chime in more on that.
Hi, Keith. Good to see you.
Hi, Emily. Nice to see you.
Hope you guys can hear me all okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, definitely a conservation restriction and an APR are different. Typically the APR is held by the state, but then also co-held by the town. I'm sorry that I missed a little bit of the discussion. Is this property, it looked like from the agenda that the discussion was sale of a CR. Is that right, Keith?
Yeah, through the APR program.
Oh,
Mark,
okay.
Mark Cruz inherited this property, and he wants to conserve it if he can. There's a house and barn that you can see down there, a very old barn and house, and he lives in New Jersey. He comes up and visits the property. He enjoys it. He's got it rented out to farmers over the years to continue what his family did on it, and so we're interested in pursuing that. He also inherited a piece of woodland up in Shelburne that we have on the market right now. And, you know, there certainly is a possibility that sale of the woodlot might provide some income tax opportunities for a bargain sale of the farmland down here in Greenfield. But we won't know that until we see how that goes. But in either case, you know, you can see by the conservation context map, if you could put that one back up, there is a lot of protected land around this that has been protected by the APR, you know, in brown, and it seems to fit in with conservation in the area. We were just talking about whether there would be public access. And Emily, I know you're familiar with this, but not every farmer likes public access on their farmlands, but some do. And so maybe there might be already existing trails on the farmland to the west, that there might be a way to connect up through this property.
Well, and the larger issue around whether or not farmers like to have traffic on their land is a matter of whether or not they can logistically handle it, given pesticide applications and the regulations around that and the buffer zones and notification of neighbors as it relates to those applications.
That's right. That's right. A lot of complications.
And I think
just-
that, and Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a difference between an APR and a CR. So like,
Yeah,
if
that's
you're-
right. The
Yeah.
APR is a much less flexible document in terms of the language that'll be used and the uses that are specified. There are some APRs I've seen that have some kind of public access, but you know, one of them, they got permission before it was placed to be able to have a license for snowmobilers, for a snowmobile trail, to provide stable access to a particularly important link. But yeah, typically APRs wouldn't include public access unless there's a very specific need for it and that it really fits with the management of the land. And then conservation restrictions, they're more, they're not as focused on agricultural resources basically, and so are often more flexible. So if it's an APR that'll be held by the state and maybe co-held by the city, that is a very standard operation. Typically, the state comes to, or you know, someone on behalf of the landowner comes to the city to see if there can be funds donated as a local match. There's 10 or 15. Sometimes it depends on the town's policies, how much is needed. But that's something that we could look into through the CPA, or that might be applied to through the CPA. So those are all pretty standard things. And so, whatever the document would be, maybe you're a long way off from that, Keith. But we could take a look at it and see, what the specifications are.
And we can also, there are also other alternatives too. So we could do a deed restriction or a conservation restriction. I don't know if we have to necessarily go through Article 97,
Well,
but
the deed restriction goes away in 30 years, so it's not perpetual.
okay.
So that's
Not
a
really.
limitation of it.
No. A lot of them do, but there's other ways to do it so that doesn't happen. It has to have a benefited parcel, and if there's a deed restriction with no benefited parcel, yeah, it goes away in 30 years. It's a term limit restriction, basically. Conservation restriction that meets the standards of the state, it lasts in perpetuity if it's held by a qualified organization like a city conservation commission or a land trust or a
Yeah.
state agency. But the APRs are in perpetuity, and so are the conservation restrictions that Franklin Land Trust works with a lot. And you're right, we need to figure out what's the best one for this property, but we thought we'd try the APR first because they have that abutting property protected. And the key is, you know, I think we need to wait till the snow's gone so we can get them out there, get Michelle out there to look at the land.
Absolutely. And then have conversations with the farmers, you know, that's an important component as well.
Yeah. We sent off a list of all the people they rent the land to now who continue to use the property. And we can get in touch with them, but first let's see if it gets over the hurdle where APR says, yeah, that's something we ought to protect, because they're the big money in this whole thing, and it would help if they were on board for it. But it's important for there to be support at the town level that, yes, this is an important area for Greenfield to conserve farmland, and we'd like to see this happen somehow.
So does that mean that you're looking for support from the Concom so that you can go to NRCS?
You know, it may be just a letter, or it may be support within the town to help raise the 10% that might be needed for the town to participate in the project. But initially, it's important for Michelle to know that, and the APR program to know that the town is in favor of something like this. As opposed to being, no, we want this to be industrial park land. We do not want to see farming take place on the property.
I see. So you're looking for a letter of support from the Conservation Commission to further your support for APR, not necessarily conservation restriction.
Yes, but not at this point. You know, I think that's a great idea, but let's wait until we know more about what's needed from the APR program. The APR program right now has quite a bit of money, and they've been able to do a lot of projects that they haven't done in previous years. So as soon as the snow's gone, we'll set up a site visit. So anybody on the Concom who wants to come can join for a site visit to go walk the property and learn from Michelle how it might fit in with the farming that's going on the abutting lands.
That
I
sounds
was
great.
just an intro tonight, so I appreciate your time listening to me.
It's good for us to have a sense of it, and so we can get all our ducks in a row. Obviously, the MDR will be looking at the soils. That's one of the most important things.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then they also, you know, like to hear that there's viability and succession planning and all those good things on the farm.
Yep. Great. Well, that's all I have.
Thanks for
Great to
coming.
hear about it. Very glad they're considering conservation.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for your time, and
Definitely.
we'll be in touch again.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Emily, is
Yes, Jessica.
that Martin's farm?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking a question about Martin's Farm.
No.
That's not Martin's
that's
Farm.
up
At
the
least
road.
it didn't look like it from what I caught of the maps.
Okay, yeah, I
No,
couldn't,
because
I didn't know what Martin's
Farm
farm
would
was.
be like up this way.
That's further, it's north of Hinsdale Brook. It's along the river. This,
Okay,
I don't think it was, but
no, I didn't think so, but,
And
they, in one of the emails with Keith, he had mentioned that they had, like leased part of the land to Martin's farm for
Ah.
hay. or
Oh,
something, so
yeah.
I got a little confused.
yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
So they want a letter. Whoops.
Oh,
Oh, Lord.
well, they don't want a letter now. That was really,
Before-
God.
Here it goes. All right.
You guys
Sorry. Sorry, go ahead, Emily.
It sounded like he wasn't asking for a letter at this time. He was just bringing the project to us to make us aware of it and to get a sense of whether there's a general support for this type of project and this one in general. But it sounds like when the time is right, they would appreciate a letter. And he did invite us to go visit the land when a site visit is set up with the MDR staff that oversees the APR acquisitions.
Would it be possible to have that site visit include one or more of the folks farming that land? I think
They
that might be
probably will.
valuable.
Certainly the landowner would be involved, and then presumably they would also have a farmer. Keith mentioned that they had reached out to all the folks who they leased the land to.
Yep.
So it sounds like he's trying to bring them together for when they do have a site visit with APR program staff.
So I think we probably might want to talk about, and Kristen, I think you started to touch on this, but conservation interests versus, and so I think it might be worth taking a quick second to pull the map that
The
screenshot.
ARC map?
And just sort of be prepared with arguments as to why this should be in conservation.
Yeah, so I looked up Coldwater Fisheries
Mhm.
and Arms Brook is not listed.
Okay.
Dang it.
Can you see? Right.
Why is it a darker color though than the underlying? That's why I
Yeah.
thought maybe for a second that it was, because it's like a different font than.
Yeah, I know, because so when I got hired, Eric had this streams layer. And he had thought that the streams layer he had was all perennial streams, but since I've been working, I've discovered that it's not necessarily all perennial. There's some intermittent that are the dark blue.
What's the address again? I'm just gonna like,
388 Coleraine Road.
It's right behind Harper's store, across
Oh,
from
okay.
Nashville Mill Road.
I
If you
just
do-
drove by there earlier today.
so,
see.
the things that I normally look at would be, for environmental stuff. You know, like DEP wetlands, hydrological connections, cold water fisheries, priority and estimated habitats, potential vernal pools, certified vernal pools, maybe any natural heritage, natural
we
community
specify?
mapping, environmental justice is a new thing, historical points or areas, ACECs and ORWs, which you don't really have a lot of in this area. We do have ORWs, but no ACECs.
ACDC.
Those are all,
Not ACDC, ACEC. Areas
up.
of environmental critical, concern, ACECs. We don't really have any, they're mostly in the Berkshires, but we do have ORWs, outstanding resource waters.
Yeah.
Like the Green River public water supply area is an ORW. It's mostly in like Leiden and North Greenfield. And then, you know, or cold water fisheries habitats, like anything that's a headwater stream, anything that's a cold water fisheries habitat that we would want to make sure like thermal loading is a critical issue, where we would want to ensure
So
that.
what are we seeing here on this parcel that falls
I'm
into
gonna
any
do
one
my
of those
quick-
categories?
well, just also to add on to what Kristen's saying, all of those are absolutely stellar, and if they're present, are appropriate and good indicators for a conservation restriction. But then we go back to the difference that Kristen was getting at between that and an APR. So if you're
Yes.
looking at an APR, those may be of some significance, but they are not primary. The things that like it sort of begins and ends with the farm soils. There's three different categories. There's prime farm soils, which are important and can be found anywhere. There's state significant farm soils, which have been identified for Massachusetts specifically. And then there's local. And local only pops up if your community has identified those. And that might be something we want to go through. It's not a difficult process, but that's not in place to my knowledge presently. So just knowing what the farm soils are on this property, if it was going down the APR route, that would be what was most important. And then all the other things that I was talking about like farm viability and access, but there's access on the road and that kind of thing. So
And contiguous protected.
exactly. Yeah,
area.
that's the other, I'm sorry, that is another huge, Ash, the fact that it's, you know, the percentage of the surrounding area that is also conserved. And particularly if it's with APR, those are the other elements for an APR for scoring. Yeah.
So I guess the things that I think would be interesting to know about the site is, first of all, of that list of things, we've got the contiguous, right? But we don't think that there's cold water fisheries, but we do have all of the floodplain and the various streams and what have you. in
Yeah,
there.
up there is flood, wetland, hydrologic connectors. I don't know if that's a perennial stream or intermittent.
Mhm.
I can
And
tell you, I'll look at the area, the topo right now.
Arms Brook. And then the riverfront.
Right. So
Really, it
given
looks-
all of those bits and pieces, there isn't a lot there that appears
Arms
to.
Brook is perennial, but BT
Developed.
dubs,
Okay.
It is
Mhm.
perennial.
it is.
Yeah, and then the estimated and priority habitat layer is on, so there's none on that property. It's
Okay.
just across the
It's
street.
just across the street.
Okay.
So the other piece, the other thing too, is how does the AgCom come into play with this? Because my natural inclination is to say it's farmland, don't touch it. Right? But
Conservation commissions are the only entity that can hold a conservation interest in a city, and that's
Okay.
by, the MGLs. So although the Ag Commission can support it, can advise, can be involved, we are the entity that they would come to along with the town council. The town
Mhm.
council would vote to approve, and then we would be voting to accept if the city wanted to hold an interest. That's not required with APRs. But especially if we put money in, then they always offer us the opportunity.
Gotcha. I think the AgCom would potentially be a good connection to make on this, but I hear what you're saying, Emily. Thank you.
I also, in the folder, just for educational, I did screenshots of the MAC handbook
Mhm.
information on conservation restrictions, if anybody, I mean, I needed to read this,
Yeah.
but I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
need to read this.
Yes,
but-
I will, for sure.
So it's in there, just so you know.
Okay.
Basically, for every conservation restriction, Massachusetts is special. We call them restrictions. Everybody else in the country calls them easements. And then we have a lot more hands-on by public entities and requirements of approval than in other places. So here, not only is the town required to weigh in, even if they're not holding any interest, the state is as well. So those multiple votes basically prove that there's public interest in the project, and then are part of what locks it in for greater protections in our state than you might have elsewhere. And that's the Article 97 that Kristen was talking about, where it takes a legislative act to roll back or to release something that's been conserved. So it's
Excellent.
as good as
Thank
we
you.
can do.
Okay, let's.
And this property is 11 acres.
40,
Oh,
right? 40,
Yeah,
40.88.
0.88.
okay. And by
And-
the way, so just based on my desktop assessment, the parcel to the east and north is a Mass Historic Commission inventory area. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a Mass Historic culturally important site.
So-
It's just been inventoried.
The north and the east.
Yeah, so that,
this-
hang on, can I request control?
Oh, yeah, let me stop mine.
Oh, all right, I'll just do a quick screen share. How do I do that? Share, here we go. So this purple area is the Mass Historic inventoried property. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily anything. It's just there might be like a historic farm on those lands. And then if I turn that off, so there's, yeah, again, there's no DFW cold water fisheries stream, which is kind of a surprise. There are a lot of hydrological connections, a lot of DEP wetlands. And then if you turn on the USGS topographic map, because there's a solid blue line, that means this is a perennial stream. So then there is a state regulated 200-foot riverfront and also a local ordinance 200-foot riverfront.
Is that how you always quickly find what's perennial and intermittent? Is because you turn on that layer? Is that like
Yeah, but I go to let me just move this guy over here. So I go to the most current USGS topographic map, and I can send you a link to this.
Yeah, that'd be great. Still
guy.
haven't like unlocked that code yet. I was like, how do we figure this out?
It's only happened to me once, Jessica, where the most current USGS topographic map was different than the Massachusetts USGS quadrangle. But it was significant because it made a huge difference in the jurisdiction of the stream. So let me just like, I'll just send this to everybody and can't find my menu to stop sharing. But I'll send this to everybody. So this website that I'm about to share is the most current USGS topographic map, which is, in my opinion, 99.9%. You can go with the USGS topographic quadrangle that we have in Mass, but one time there was a difference. And so I go to this one instead.
Oops.
And we can get more into like the definition of a perennial stream another time, but it's kind of in depth, but
I assume it.
quick and dirty, if it's a solid blue line on the most current USGS topographic quad, it's perennial. And then there are steps you can follow after that.
All right, cool. Well, that's exciting. So any further questions, conversation around the 388 Coleraine Road? Seems like we're ready to scurry on to old business. Specifically, Lamp Flat Road, parcel R08-11A-0. A road was cut and excavated down the wooded hillside to the floodplain and riverfront below in order to access the Fall River. This was not a permitted project. Stephen Pritchard was heading the project and is not in attendance this evening, however, has been in contact with Jessica, who will present on his behalf.
Yeah, so his communication is still A+ with everything that's going on his end. He hit a pretty major roadblock with the ice that happened between last meeting and this meeting, to the point where it just wasn't even like safe to go down that hill. So there hasn't been like progress necessarily since last time, except physical progress, but he has been speaking with the two companies he touched on last time. One was a company out of Gloucester where he hired kind of a consultant, and that person's coming out next week, and they're going to look at the site and come up with help him come up with a more kind of formal written plan of what he wants to do to restore the area. I'm just looking at my notes, so yeah, they're gonna look at where, he should install more physical barriers like the rolls on top of the soil, as explore ideas with like installing some rock, understanding that, they're in the 200-foot riverfront that would be considered fill, but maybe up top further. Detailed plan on tree and sapling plantings, and with the goal of having all native trees. And then also he spoke with the hydro seeding company. They said they won't do it until we have reached a point in the weather where there's no threat of frost, because it will die. So that's having a temperature of 50 degrees or more for a stretch of time. I don't know if it was like a week or something like that. So he is kind of coming up against the hard reality of like, there's ice out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he just can't like really make progress until that goes away.
Yeah.
But he is laying the groundwork for having professionals weigh in on how to stabilize the soil, like as soon as the weather permits.
Mhm.
So that's where that's at.
Great.
Wait, he did actually say, yeah, I mean, he did touch on this, but the informal plan is outside of hiring those, is to get the trees in the ground, plants, grass, and then put the water tanks at the top of the hill so that they'll be
To water down.
prepped to water
Yep.
if we have dry spells.
Yep, great. They have been wonderful to work with.
Yeah, they seem very engaged in correcting
Yep.
Yeah, he's like
their boo-boo.
almost over communicating. Like, I think he's just like, so he's just really worried about it. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure.
yeah.
Well, regulations are complicated. Massachusetts is a very over-regulated state.
Well, and if
They
you don't
just-
know that the regulation exists, like I would imagine like this type of work, like agriculture, if you don't know about the rules, then how can you follow them?
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
know what you don't know.
Right.
Are
exactly.
they in chapter 61 or chapter 61A or chapter 61B? Because that would make a pretty big difference.
I
Did we
don't
talk
know.
about this? I forget.
No, I don't
I
think
don't
we've
think we
talked
have.
about this. What difference does
Yeah,
like,
what would it?
It makes a big difference. I mean, gosh, Mark Stinson would have been a better person to pick his brain when he was here. I mean, normally if you have like an agriculturally cleared area and you just square off your agriculturally cleared area, you can bump into riverfront or buffer zone without issue, just to square off your already cleared area. This
So
is
there was
different. This is like a new access road.
Mhm.
And it's not to access like a pump house or, anything specifically related to ag. It's just like a recreational thing. So maybe it's not even exempt, but just a thought.
There was a hayfield at the top of.
yes, yeah, that's an actively
Mhm.
farmed hayfield.
Mhm.
But if the whole property is in 61A or 61B, I mean, it doesn't matter at this point because the state's not getting involved and it's just local. So,
Yeah,
and they're already engaged in doing
yeah, and I think
mitigation.
it's all stuff like he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're just kind of like lighting the fire for the timeline to be faster.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't even think now that I would have to dig really deep into the regs because they are really complicated when it comes to ag exemptions, but I don't think that carving a new road with cut and fill in a resource area is necessarily exempt. It's like if it was to access, an ag related function, like a pump house or something, that's different, but this is just a recreational thing. So I don't even think it is exempt. I was just going on a tangent.
Okay.
Cool. Right on. Let's see, up next, update on violation at 30 Adams Road, unpermitted clearing in the buffer zone to bordering vegetative wetland and bank.
I put this on the agenda in hopes that I would hear back because
Mm.
I have to have the agenda finalized
Yeah.
2 days prior to, which is Friday because I don't work Mondays or,
Right.
the weekend. So, there's not really an update besides I sent the letter. I did it certified mail. I have not received the receipt.
Gotcha, like the.
Yeah, that they've received it.
Mhm.
I sent another certified postal a day or two prior, and I just got that back today. So I feel like in the letter, I asked them to be present this or the next meeting and to let me know, RSVP or whatever. So,
Right, okay.
yeah, so that I'll keep it on the agenda for the next meeting. Hopefully they're present.
Yep, great, thanks. Let's see, next, conservation property maintenance, improvement and priorities. Discuss any need for maintenance and improvements of conservation land in the city and additional conservation priorities.
Yeah, so this was the open-ended item that we added because we didn't have public meetings or hearings, so
Mhm.
that we could discuss any, maintenance or improvement needs.
So, this seems like a rather large body of information. And to move forward with this both effectively and efficiently, it would be really helpful to have, or to see bite-sized chunks of what we're going to tackle laid out. Like, for example, discuss any need for maintenance and improvements of conservation land in the city. That's a lot of land. And I don't suspect that we're going to discuss every parcel this evening.
The good news is, we had another deadline today for next week's meeting, and I haven't received any additional applications. So next meeting, we also won't have any meetings or hearings. So we can, you know,
Excellent. Split it up.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's
So do we want to like outline an agenda or come up with the?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping, yeah, so that's sort of what I would like to see is I would like to see like a clear path that we're going to take and very clear outcomes that we're looking for.
Yeah, action items.
Yes,
Of action
exactly.
items.
Exactly. I don't want us to find ourselves in a situation where we sort of talk about things and then don't end up with any outputs from it.
I'm curious, being new, how do you complete maintenance that's needed in conservation areas? Like I saw some emails from Mitch's day where there was like a rotting bridge or something in Griswold, and
Oh, that's still there.
is that
It is still there. I hike at Griswold all the time because it's so close and it's so short. I can do it on my lunch break, and it's the perfect place to just take the dog for a walk for an hour on my lunch break. And all of those maintenance items that we've talked about since I started in December of 2020 or whenever it was are still on the agenda.
So
So
how do, like, what is needed? Can we just, like, do I just know and then I hire someone and have them build a bridge?
that's, we talked about that before, and that's, I think maybe we're, I don't want to speak for you, Liz, but like, maybe that's what our problem is we talk about these agenda items and then there's no action. And they just sort of get like tumbled into the ether. And it
So
would
let
be
me
really
ask you
good to
this.
have some action items like actually assigned and
Let me ask you this, because do the more seasoned commission members know if we have a listing somewhere of things that have been assessed in the past and just determined that need to be done, like, for example, the bridge?
Erica.
Well, I was gonna say, the only thing I know about is Griswold, because Lincoln Fish takes care of it, and there's money set aside for that maintenance, but we haven't, as far as I know, we haven't done anything maintenance wise, other than asking Lincoln to do.
Who takes care of it?
Lincoln Fish.
Did he retire, Kristen? Lincoln Fish.
Yeah,
Lincoln Fish,
so-
he's the forester, but he's retired now, so we might want to like, sort
I
of
don't-
check on the status of that and see if we
Yeah,
want
so
to.
he's still taking care of this or not.
So
Yeah.
it almost sounds to me like our first steps in this process are sort of prioritizing, like, let's put together, I'm sure this exists in some folder that I just haven't looked at yet, but let's put together a full comprehensive list of all of the properties that are ours,
Mhm.
right? And then basically we're going to have to walk each of them in turn, right?
Well, that was what Mitch and Travis did.
Travis, yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Doesn't
lot of work
happen,
that's
right?
been done on
I
this.
was gonna say, as far as I know, most of the only other work that's happened, it hasn't been really cleanup work or anything, it's been the mapping,
Mhm.
Also Mitch was doing boundary markers. And I don't
Right.
know how far that got, but when I
Yeah.
joined, I guess a year ago or
Yeah.
whatever it
Yeah.
was, that was one of the things that was in process.
Maybe
Right.
we need an update from Travis. I guess not Mitch because he's gone, but like Travis and maybe Jessica, if you can kind of find any kind of summary that Mitch was doing
Mhm.
on the status of our conservation lands and any maintenance that's required, and then maybe we can come up with a prioritization of, you know, what's the most critical safety hazard or that needs permitting, like if, you know, like for Griswold, for example, and I don't know a lot about the other conservation areas because I don't frequent those as much. But with Griswold, we talked about punch-in, which is basically like a boardwalk kind of thing on 2 feet, over wetland crossings. And, you know, that would require permitting because it's in buffer zone or riverfront under the ordinance, that kind of stuff. So we would have to permit that, and then that would require funding and then we talked to Mike Fish about upgrading there's these kiosks at Griswold that have wildlife information, and that's sort of outdated. Like there's like a drum log it used to be a hollow log that was cool for, you know,
Ruffed grouse or.
yeah, for ruffed
Things like
grouse
that.
drumming, and it's long deteriorated, and there's a snake basking
Yeah.
pile of rocks it's shaded out now. You know, but he was really good at coming up with that kind of stuff, and he seemed amenable to upgrading those kiosks, and maybe we would do it all online instead of,
Talking about
you
the
know, with
QR
a pamphlet, various stuff like that. That was what we talked about with Mitch.
One of the things that I'm glad we're talking about this now because it brings it to mind. There is a way, I don't know what the procedure is, but for the Conservation Commission to set aside $5,000 every year towards a fund that we have that can be used for conservation, presumably, or for maintenance of properties. And every year we could do that. It's possible it's out of CPA funds, but
Wait, where does the
and-
money come from?
I'm trying to remember. It might be CPA funds, but it's just this opportunity that we have. We talked about it it's a little while ago, but
Yeah.
but if we can remember how we do that, that'd be a great thing for us to do. It's not
Yeah.
a lot, but if we did it every year,
Yeah.
it would just bring, it would create this pool of funds for us to do little things, and then we could write grants for bigger stuff and partner with maybe rec
Yeah.
or with land trusts or, something like that to get some more.
That would be so cool, because I feel like that was one of our biggest issues, Jessica, before, is that we just didn't have enough funds, and that we weren't even really clear as a commission how much we had and what we had allocated to which fund. So, you know,
Yeah,
once
so who keeps,
yeah.
is that Eric that keeps track of that? Like who has
Mhm.
access to that?
I think it's you.
Yeah.
Me?
I think it's you.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, Travis was really on top of that. He was such a good chair. Like, he was really on top of all that stuff. But like, he would be an easy resource to just get all that information, and then you and Liz and me and Erica and Emily can all have that information going forward. It's probably on the Google Drive.
Right.
Yeah,
mean,
I
it's
think getting
expensive.
money is like top priority.
Well,
Like
yeah.
if there's
Yeah.
deadlines, like, and every year it resets, you
Yeah,
know,
that's my impression.
definitely be like hitting that
Especially
every
if you
single
can
year.
cash in
Yeah.
each-
Well, I mean, a lot of the because I went to one of the meetings or whatever, a lot of the Concom get like whatever, 5,000 from town council every year,
Mhm.
Right.
just to.
Yeah,
just
a line
if
item.
you need to-
Yeah, and when I talked to Mark Stinson
don't
on that note, Erica, he was saying, you know, because we were talking about how, not to digress about your position, Jessica, but like, we've had a lot of agents, and you know, it's annoying that we can't hang on to an agent for very long, and we've been talking with Mark Stinson, for example, about how we can maybe alter that. And one of our thoughts was maybe we could combine that with another town, like Deerfield, for example, had a ton of emergency certs in 2024 because of all the flooding, and they don't have an agent. And so that was a lot of work for just the chair to deal with.
Yeah, Mark brought that up to me as
Yeah.
well.
So
And
like, we were talking about, you know, combining, you know, two towns so that you get benefits and then it's a full-time position and that's more beneficial to you. And then we have a more long-term agent who is more familiar with our city and our issues and our conservation lands, benefit all around. Um,
I agree. There's so much to know with this.
Mhm.
Like, I feel like, I'm just like learning what my responsibilities are still, like 4 months later. I'm like, oh, I do that, and to have to reinvent kind of the wheel every 2 years.
Mhm.
must
and
be
we keep doing it
Yeah.
over, like every agent, it's like, yeah,
frustrating. Mhm.
and it's, yeah. And you deserve benefits, so,
Oh, well, I do have benefits.
Oh, that's nice.
oh, well, okay,
I
but
think I might be the first one.
good,
Yeah.
good.
So, okay, I'll kind of collect all those thoughts that we just spitballed into an email, and then we'll hone that in for the next meeting.
Okay,
So we can be like focused.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I
Because
think that would be good.
it
Agreed,
seems
agreed,
like
Liz. Thank you.
there's a lot of work that could be done. And it would just be, given our collective resource of time being that there's not much of it.
Yeah, I
Uh,
just remember Travis talking with, I guess Mike Fish, is that was that his
It's
name?
Lincoln Fish,
Lincoln, thank you, Lincoln Fish, about, like revamping all of the kiosks, and he was gonna get grant money, and like, I just felt like that didn't go anywhere, and there were action items assigned, and it just sort of fizzled, and I don't know, I don't wanna like,
I thought he was working or was gonna work or wanted to work with a bunch of kids who were gonna help and he was gonna work with
yeah,
them. Yeah, and I don't know if it,
Hmm.
whatever, it didn't and I can't remember, this was also maybe around COVID time, so maybe, so
yeah,
that might have
that'll do
been
it.
part of it. I
it
think.
might have been around COVID, you're right.
Like, it
Yeah,
seems
he-
like it was quite a while ago, so I think maybe it might have been that.
I'd be happy to reach out to Lincoln. I sort of have professional connections with him, so I can see if he's still interested and maybe he can remember some of the details. But I love the idea of us just knowing what the issues are at the properties and then, just keeping a couple of them in our court to try and make progress on over time. And then figure out what other ways that we can get funds so that we can have them in our budget. I wish I could remember what that source was, but I just remember that there was an annual request we can make, so.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
but
did
it's-
have a couple of people come before the commission, like, I can't remember how long ago it was, but a couple of folks came before the commission to talk about issues that they found at Highland Park. And I'm sure it's all documented on the Google Drive, but just having, like a running tab when we do have meetings where we don't have a lot of public hearings, this would be the kind of agenda that would be good to readdress.
Yeah, and we have done some work, well, we haven't done it, we've had other, like you said, people came in. They did the signage around the vernal pool in Highland
Yeah.
Park and the invasive removal, so it's other volunteers in town who come in and wanna do stuff. Not necessarily us going out or trying to find people.
But should it be, I mean, if we're managing those properties, I mean, we should be on top of that, so.
Yeah, well, it seems like a lot of the properties are passive or basically not really used, and there's a
Mhm.
couple that have no access, so.
That's
so
true.
I think we just sort of let it, I guess. go,
Which
'cause-
means like it should be even more manageable if there's only a few that
Mhm.
have trails. So
Right.
we could get the structures up that needs to be
So
there.
I feel like, sorry, go ahead, Liz.
I think what I would be interested in, and I'm not seeing anything in the folders like popping out at me, would be a comprehensive list of all of those properties and which
Mhm.
ones are accessible
Mhm.
and which ones are not. And that way, I think we could probably prioritize the ones that are accessible in
Yeah.
terms of dealing with them.
Mhm.
But I do think that keeping.
Oh my gosh.
Gotta do some aerobics during the meeting or something.
Yeah, you gotta keep moving.
But just to keep an eye on the ones that are considered to be inaccessible because people find ways to access stuff.
And that's the
Yeah.
other thing we should,
Yeah.
yeah. So they're not using, maybe not being used for recreation, they might be being used to live on.
Or some teenagers got a party camp.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would suggest reaching out to Travis too, because he did a lot of work on that when he was chair, and that was sort of his like pet project. So he may have, you may
There
not
are-
have to do that much work. He may be
There are
like,
detailed,
already.
there are detailed lists of the properties that we own, and then all the deed research that just got shared with the Open Space Task Force recently. And then one of the members of the Open Space Task Force went further than that, and now they have created a full list of all the properties of the town. Not that that's our responsibility, but so that stuff's there, and it'd be great to add to it just our understanding of what the needs are, and as people come to us, have a repository for where we can keep track of that. And all this stuff just doesn't happen because we don't have time. But if we can create some kind of institutional memory, so the next group don't have to do the same thing we're doing right now, and then have some kind of momentum where, oh, here's a little project we're working on. Over time, it would make a big difference, I think.
There is a list and little blurb or whatever in the, about all the properties in the open space and recreation plan that the town
Yeah,
does, so I
okay.
mean,
Yeah, I just opened that
yeah.
350 page
Yeah.
plan.
oh my God, that's long.
But stuff does not necessarily happen with that because, I mean, I worked on it in 1999, I think.
Uh-huh.
And the same initiatives and the same stuff is in the newest one.
Oh,
They're
so
very
embarrassing.
Very
That's
similar.
why we have the task force. We're trying to pick a couple of things. Oh, and that's a nice segue if we want to
This
move
is a
on.
nice segue,
right.
actually.
The criteria.
Do we need to officially announce it?
Yeah, let me do that real
Okay.
quick. Sorry, I was digging and digging. We are looking at conservation priority mapping project to discuss additional identification and weighting of priorities.
Okay, I just want to kind of add to that segue. When I was opening that plan, the document that I found in our drive had a letter addressed to Eric from whoever he submitted that plan to, that said that we are now, because of the plan,
Mhm.
we are now approved to apply for any
Oh, right,
CPR or
Some-
CPA maybe grants.
right, you have
And then
to have that plan in place before.
Community preservation.
I
Yeah.
know, I have a
I forget
correspondence.
which one it is, but I
I
know
forget
you
what
have
it
to
is,
have,
too.
you have to have them. In
Hmm.
all towns.
I can look for it in a second, but when I went to the website, there was like 6 different types of grants that
Yeah.
qualified as whatever the grant type
Yeah.
was. And they varied from environmental. I feel like there was some social environmental grants that fell under that umbrella, but it just seemed like we're eligible through 2028. I think we missed 2025, so it's
Which, I mean, that gives us that
so
much
we
more
have
time to
3 more
plan,
years, so
right?
6, 7, 8, that we can maybe get our ducks in a row and get some more
Mhm.
money for conservation purposes.
Mhm.
On top of whatever that 5,000, maybe that's a totally separate,
Cool.
yeah.
Yep.
So,
Awesome.
yeah, I'll look for that actually. Oh, so, well, I guess I should keep talking. So the, the mapping project, I touched on it, I think, last meeting. I haven't worked on it since the meeting, I've
My,
been,
my suggestion was, because again, this is huge, was just there's a list of criteria that's being formed. And I thought, since we had extra time, that focusing on that list might be helpful just for us to familiarize ourselves with it. And then also, since weighting is something that the task force is encouraging us to do, we could say, hey, those are the ones that are important to us. And that's pretty straightforward. But
Okay.
and also Allison Gage did send that map, and you've been working on a map with Patty and Allison, but I thought that the list of criteria might be just sort of a fairly concrete thing that we could at least talk about. And if there's things we notice that are missing that we would want, we could suggest that those be added.
Okay, are you talking about the list that or was it Allison,
Gauge.
just
Just-
sent today? Or was it, yeah, today?
That and the pre-existing document that you and me sent
The one I
around.
sent the link, the ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the ideas here. I'll share my screen. Am I sharing? No. I'm not. Go back. Right. Sorry, mapping project.
No problem.
I gotta find the link that because it was a Google Drive. I didn't save it in our Google Drive because it was like a. Emily, you don't happen to have it? Like,
I'll find it. I'm pretty sure I've got it here. I'll share it.
oh, I found it.
Oh, good. And I've got Allison's email ready if you want me to share that after we look at this.
Okay. So this was kind of their brainstorm of it's really broad. It's just the ideas. So it starts with the objective to ID, map, and work with different parts of the city government to acquire new conservation land, considering factors like biomap, adjacency to existing conservation land, serving environmental justice communities, climate resiliency, like connectivity, flood storage, and sustenance. Bring together partners and funding sources to facilitate the process and reduce the burden on city staff. So I don't know what this is: district, rural residential, forested residential, urban zoning districts.
Those look like planning board districts or zoning districts.
And we were talking about different types of conservation that would be appropriate for different areas. Like a pocket park, you wouldn't make out in the like north meadows where there's lots of farmland, but might be really valuable in the center of town.
Okay. So this next section, conservation elements. So there's sort of different sections: undeveloped parcels, greenfield residential zones map, and then environmental justice communities map, funding, check open space plan for state programs. Oh, look, CPA under funding. I think you're right, Emily. I think it is CPA that you're talking about. Conserved lands map. And that's it for the conservation elements section.
When we
And
look at
then-
the
What?
oh, yeah, okay.
I don't know, someone was saying something. And then it jumps down to qualifiers 1 through 5. This is where we're getting into a little bit more of like the idea of weighting. Weighting the priorities. So threat level of development, lot size, more than 5 acres, adjacency to conserved or cluster of conserved / high value within a wildlife corridor, within an aquifer / proximity to water supply / wetland, river, flood zone, proximity to environmental justice communities, and stewardship opportunities. Example from Doer technical potential of solar study. I haven't looked at that. I don't know what that is. So they've added to this a little bit. It's stewardship opportunities, QGIS, questions to consider, and that's the end. So it's not really necessarily like a straight up list. It's kind of a brain dump. But the conservation elements, I think, is where it gets more into the layers.
Maybe it would be helpful then to look at the information that Allison sent along, because it is a little bit more digested than this list.
Okay.
This is pretty spaghetti on the wall. All right. So she gave us this map. Trying to open it. Okay, of course you don't see the map. Here, I'll do that again. There we go. Okay. Is this a map you've seen before, Jessica?
Yes, I just saw it today
Okay.
for the first time.
So it's pretty different from the one that we had done before in the past.
Yeah, that
Um,
Mitch made.
Yeah, then that sort of just took a few criteria and then made them darker if there was more that sort of were relevant to it.
Yeah, this
Um,
one doesn't appear to necessarily like show parcels specifically. I mean, I guess it kind of does in that central part where it's like
Yeah.
more urban.
But it doesn't show like Rocky Mountain.
And it's showing parcels that are enrolled in one of the Chapter 61 programs. Those are outlined.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I meant like priority parcels where they're weighted a darker color, because I think the dark
That's-
green is I don't know, that looks like it might be a little more biomap than just for the Green River riparian area.
Mhm.
But then there's also like a darker green in that urban area. Do you know what I mean? Like towards.
For the EJ, you mean? Cause EJ seems to be south of the Route 291 connection and east of 91.
I don't think the legend's very descriptive on this.
No, it isn't. That's why I'm getting her email out too, because I think she talked about more what was going on. All right, so sounds like they were looking for feedback. The layers are the same color set at a high transparency, so they're overlapping. So the darker areas where there's more things that are in common.
Oh, okay,
Which
so it's like a
focuses on the
raster
rivers.
analysis where
Yeah.
like the darker, it's like a biological hotspot.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then she gave a list to weight from 1 to 5 on presence or absence. And so this list were the prime ones, and it seems like these are most of the ones that are marked on the map. And then there's other things that we could consider, like threat level, lot size. Can you guys read the email
Yeah.
as it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It's good on our end.
Okay, good. You've got that giant screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love weighted raster analyses too, with like like with darker hotspots. I think that makes perfect sense. So that looks great. Is that on the Google Drive or is that shared?
Yeah, both these, let me just double check before I say yes, but
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, in the folder, there's Mitch's old one,
Mhm.
their draft map, and then the email that Emily's reading from.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Do we need to do anything on this tonight or?
I think it'd be great if we just at least said which are the ones that are of the most importance when we're looking at land for conservation purposes.
So that's
Mhm.
like a task for a longer projection.
I guess if I was thinking it's sort of like what we did earlier, where we talked about what the criteria are. There's these listed here: prime farmland soil, environmental justice area, biomap, regional connectivity, regional rare species, local landscapes, core habitat, critical natural landscape, 100-year floodplain, and mapped river to Green River, mapped river corridor for the Green River. If we were just looking at those as criteria, are there ones that would stand out as being the highest priority when we are looking at properties for being conserved?
I would
Yes.
disagree with some of those.
Okay.
Just throwing a number from 1 to 5 on each of
Oh,
those.
yeah. We could,
That's fair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, you could say 0 if you wanted to. Like
Yeah,
zero-
like I would even add different ones that aren't included.
yeah, what would you add?
Biomap is great, you know, it includes, you know, core natural landscapes and connectivity, but also like there's, I mean, personally, I like to look at, you know, cold water fisheries habitats. I don't know if environmental justice is really kind of a conservation value. That's more of a social justice value, but that can be something we can discuss as a group. Potential vernal pools, certified vernal pools does go into the biomap because there's the connectivity on a meta population scale, but that's just one part of biomap. You know, priority and estimated habitat, rare plant communities, rare wildlife communities, wildlife corridors, 100-year floodplain, you know, be it bordering lands up to flood is a jurisdictional resource area that we are currently overseeing regulation for, but also bordering vegetated wetlands, isolated vegetated wetlands, riverfront area under the ordinance and also under the state. So intermittent streams, perennial streams, like there's a lot in there that I don't think is necessarily really covered.
So one of the things we were talking about with biomap is that some of those biomap layers consider a lot of what I think they consider a lot of
They
what you
do,
list.
but it's I guess what I'm kind of trying to get at is for our jurisdiction, like we are a conservation commission who are supposed to be regulating aquatic resource areas. I mean, some of this criteria is obviously important for us in consideration for conservation land, like whether it's contiguous with other conservation land, whether it provides important wildlife corridors, but like as a conservation commission, should we be prioritizing aquatic resource areas?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
We should definitely be focusing on the stuff that's specifically within our purview.
I mean,
So,
I just
yeah.
feel like the no-brainer is like aquatic corridors,
Mhm.
right? Like that's just, it's kind of like you're
Yeah.
getting a big bang for your buck if you're just going like anything in that Green River corridor.
I'm just saying
One
like
caveat
this
I
this
would make,
raster analysis is awesome, but I'm not sure that that's exactly the same application that we would apply for. I don't know. I don't just floating that out there.
I think one thing I want to make sure that we keep in mind too, is that the Conservation Commission has jurisdictional responsibilities. And then also beyond that, are the responsible entity for conservation of land, which does go beyond waterways. So I think this is a thing that's very unclear actually, and is a real problem for the functioning of conservation commissions across the state, is that almost like 90% of the time for anybody is spent on water issues because somebody has to do it. And then
Mhm.
also we are the entity that holds the conservation restriction, which all like, you know, will always have things beyond water resources. So I would just make sure, or I would want to offer that to us as a group to remember when we're thinking about conservation as a broader topic. Absolutely, it makes sense for us to think about the things that are of highest importance to us, and that's why they're asking us to weigh in. But conservation writ large is also our job. It's just we don't get that much time to spend on it, really. And very few.
I would agree with that. And I think that a lot of times whenever I'm reaching out to a Conservation Commission as a consultant, trying to offer them land on behalf of an applicant for, you know, some kind of a CR issue, they're usually only interested in the land if one, there are a lot of wetlands, and two, if there's public access. Those are the two primary reasons I see commissions. I've actually had commissions turn a beautiful parcel down, beautiful, like net benefit to rare species, gorgeous conservation package down because it is not contiguous with other conservation parcels. Which really stinks. So I've seen those being big issues.
Start conserving land.
Yeah,
Well, that's it.
totally.
Mm.
Well, but like, what is the main goal to conserve? What is like the main
Mhm.
goal? Is it for
Well-
ecosystem stability?
Conservation's, let's see, it depends on what perspective you're taking. So the IRS has established, yeah, a list basically of accepted conservation goals. Some of those have to do with agriculture. Some of those have to do with wildlife, air, clear water, you know, all these things are the things that they look for. Other things they look for are supporting state and local priorities. So that's where making sure that it's close to other conserved land comes in. And then, you know, if it has been mapped as an identified area by my biomap or some other possibility, you know, other, you know, sometimes the state agencies have action plans about forests or farmland, that kind of thing. So in any restriction, whether it's an APR or conservation restriction, they'll actually list the purposes of it being conserved. So we'll always, and that's actually one of the processes that you go through when you conserve land, is that you bring that list of purposes to the Conservation Commission to
Mhm.
verify it. So we're the people who would just say, oh yeah, we looked at the map, there are wetlands there. Yes, that's one of the purposes. So the goal for conservation for each property will be unique to the property. And then looking at the entity that's being asked to either approve or fund it, then you want to say, how does this stand in terms of what we're looking to conserve? You know, we might be a planning board and we're really interested in having lots of housing. And so we wouldn't be prioritizing conservation, you know, but then probably that property wouldn't come to them, they'd come to us and we'd look at it and go, is there good wildlife? Are there cold water resources? You know, are you connecting this with other conserved land? So the process that the task force is going through is, you know, we're trying to like figure our way towards being able to find ways to get closer to accomplishing some of the goals in the open space plan. So this step
Yes.
is to make this list of priorities and to create maps that reflect that, and then to gather some information from the committees, you know, the commissions, so that when whoever is getting in front, you know, getting behind a project, we can say, well, the Conservation Commission really is very focused on making sure that there's healthy riparian areas, and then maybe beyond that, wildlife and connectivity and, you know, supporting public access, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because my thought process was if we had a clear goal, it'd be easier to have clear priorities and then weight those priorities. So if we're, you know, if our clear goal is ecosystem stability and function, then I feel like it's easier to be like, well, what do we need to look for to achieve that? Right? But if it's, sorry, people are walking
Yeah,
by.
I know, I'm keeping an eye.
I feel like that's a bigger question, Jessica, and we should
Yeah.
table that and maybe not answer that this evening, because when as a consultant, I do a lot of permitting where we offer conservation commissions, conservation land. And sometimes they take it and sometimes they don't. And sometimes we have to shop around to other land trusts to see if they want it. And often this is associated with rare species issues, not just wetlands issues. But there has to be like incentives involved, and or the Conservation Commission won't want it. And so like maybe this is a global question that we should come up with a mission statement as a commission, maybe not just tonight, because it
Yeah,
is a bigger
because-
question.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be tonight. I mean, this is like, it's a big project, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, we don't necessarily need to come up with it tonight, but I think one of the big questions that have come to in my brain is like, well, what's our goal? Because if we're trying to identify priority parcels so that we can be more proactive about reaching out to the community to see if people are interested, you know, in potentially selling their land, selling a conservation restriction,
Yeah.
or
Well,
whatever the
that,
options are,
there
then
is
it's
a
just, it will just help
priority.
us better identify who to reach out to. Because right now, it just seems really abstract
Mhm.
and.
Yeah.
So there is, I thought, gosh, Travis was so invested in this and I can't remember everything, but there was, I thought, a citywide priority parcel prioritization plan that was identified. And that's why we got so up in arms about the poet seat thing, the Mountain Ridge issue, because that was specifically identified in the city's, Erica,
I think it's in the open space plan.
thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
knew you'd know what it was.
It-
Yeah,
Okay,
the
so I
open
gotta
space
read
plan.
that.
One of the major priorities was the ridge line, and that
Okay.
came up, and she wanted to sell it immediately. It's like,
Right.
no.
And we were like,
Right.
but that was already identified as a priority parcel. Why? So there
Wait,
is
so
some kind
can
of
you guys-
prioritization.
I feel like
Yeah.
this has come up a lot, and I don't know what you're talking about. So there's a parcel that you guys talked the mayor into not selling, right?
Right.
And
It was-
and
it
now
was being
it's been
taken
in
for
limbo
taxes.
though
It's still in limbo. Yeah,
and how long has
'Cause
that
the
been going
taxes are-
on?
3 years,
And what's it called? Does it have a name?
Mountain Ridge.
Mountain Ridge?
Mountain Ridge or,
Okay.
what's the name of that?
And what is it gonna take to
That-
get it out of limbo?
The mayor.
Well,
And
there's
but
some
is this,
tax-
did this
she's-
get passed
they-
from
there's-
another mayor
It
though?
was,
'Cause
yes,
she's-
it was,
okay.
the whole, there was 2 properties and they were taken for taxes. And there was a house on one of them, they sold that. one.
Yeah,
And then the other one, we made her, she wanted to sell both. of them, but
yeah,
We got her to save one of them.
okay.
Um,
And so we just need the
But she
current
thinks-
mayor to
Yeah,
sign something or
Well,
like,
to determine that it's not,
Donate it.
which,
oh,
It's
so
not.
I thought,
I
Right.
mean,
so it didn't like, even though the previous mayor agreed,
It
they didn't
never-
like,
she
sign
kept saying that
something.
she needed to wait until she needed to see if the police station needed the property.
Oh,
which
yeah.
They couldn't use
Ah.
it because it's on a cliff.
Right,
I mean.
right.
okay. And then
Um,
the current mayor is aware that
Yeah,
that needs to be completed or?
yeah, I think Travis talked to her, I think, at least.
Yeah, she came
Okay.
she came to join us when she was first elected and we talked about that issue and she was very ambiguous about it. And as far as I know, it's just been ignored. And I think she has, other issues that she's dealing with as new mayor and,
Right.
she
But
kind of has.
Maybe because that was like right off the bat and she was swamped with all
Mhm.
the like
Yeah.
new things.
But
that-
I don't think we have forgotten about it. It is still fresh on our minds because like Erica said, it has been identified as a priority parcel in the open space plan. And there is, just kind of like circle back, Jessica, like there is a priority list of parcels that have been identified as
I'm
prioritized.
gonna dig
Sure, they're
into that
gonna
open
figure it
space
out.
plan because that is what this, the project is to implement the plan. So I just need to read it.
Yeah, like somebody already went through all of that raster
Yeah, I thought it was
analysis and-
350. Sorry, because it's a long
Yeah.
Yeah.
just some light nighttime reading.
That's
You know,
true, that's
Go back
true.
to that later,
Right.
but.
But because like also, I don't know, we could get grants from it. It seems like
Yeah,
so much work went into that and to not leverage that and get.
Yeah.
I do know that Travis did a lot of work on that. I would definitely touch base with him and to see like where he left off because that was his like pet
His
project.
baby.
He was
Yeah.
really invested in that. We were all really invested in that parcel on the ridge, I live right at the bottom of it. So obviously and if you Google the city of Greenfield, that's the picture that comes up on our city website. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's
There you
the
go.
hallmark of our city. It's just unthinkable that that would be sold to industrial development, but,
Well,
it's just
that's
like the open space plan in general was something Travis spent a lot of time on.
weeks ago now. It just isn't logistically does not make sense.
Oh, for
And this-
development,
right, and
yeah.
This one
Yeah.
kind of was like.
Oh, you mean like blasting the back of the ridge to expand the police department? No, I, of
Yes.
course,
Yeah.
Sorry.
because they have drainage problems, because that will help.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm thinking,
Here we go.
oh
I'll get it.
gosh,
I'll get it.
okay.
We talk.
I've got a
Um,
suggestion, or I just want to read back something. I'm taking
Yeah.
notes to bring back to the task force. So some of the feedback that I have that I want to bring to them is just our question is, how does this mapping process compare to what's already in the open space plan? Since there are areas that are, and then maybe even parcels that are prioritized. Is even maybe, if it's been identified in the open space plan, one of the criteria that could be used, right? Like we did with the ridge, the Mountain Ridge property. What of our jurisdictional area types are incorporated into biomap layers so that we don't have to be, should we be calling out like, what are the specifics, or are there things that really capture those values? And then also to let them know that something that this has prompted for us is to spend some time to consider what our specific goal or mission or point of view is in terms of conservation to help us weigh in on the final list of criteria. Anything else I should add to that? And I did mark down the various resources that you mentioned, Kristen, so I can give those as examples of things.
They might be in the biomap. I don't normally pull that up because it's so dense. I usually pull up the individual layers when I'm doing my desktop analyses, but they might already be in there. So as long as somebody's savvy enough to like weed through all of the
Yeah.
biomap sub layers.
A lot of that stuff is called out in the descriptions of those layers as well.
Yeah.
So it might give some of that information. And I can give them general feedback that the weighted raster approach seems like a good
Yeah.
one.
I love
In
that.
general.
I love that. It's so clean too when you give a map, and you like weight, zeros and ones and stack them up on top of each other and give that nice bio hotspot. I love that. It's a really clean map. So
Yeah, it tells a story.
Yep.
Easily.
So Emily, I'm not sure if you've seen this or if this might be of use to you, but this seems like it might be getting at some of these things, and it's the Open
Sure.
Space and Recreation Planners Workbook, which is only 94 pages as opposed
No.
to
That's it?
But it's in the open space folder, and that seems like it might be, I've barely just sort of like scrolled through it real quick, but it seems like it might be of some utility if you haven't
Sure.
already found it, of course, which you may know all about it, but.
I think one of the things is that we're taking as our starting place the open space plan, and then sort of trying to feed in a few other sources of information like the municipal vulnerability plan and the master
Yeah.
plan, and then just come back to, okay, so what are a couple things we can do? And so one of the things that we chose was to go from, okay, here are the general areas and maybe a couple of priority properties to what can our systematic approach be to getting conservation projects going in Greenfield by saying, what are our community priorities? And so the Conservation Commission has a really important role in that. And I think it is really great for us to just take a little bit of time and think about it, and then ask for more information, like, what kinds of maps are available, or if they are going to be looking at it in terms of zones in the town, then that might be an interesting lens for us to look at too, because in the center of the city, flooding and stormwater issues
Yeah.
might be of more importance than, around the rivers out in the more rural areas of the town. So that might be a place where we could say, well, okay, we're clear that, infrastructure, safety, and biological functioning are the two like hallmarks of what we're interested in having our conservation restrictions accomplish. And then we could say, in this part of the town, this is the kind of project that we would like to see so that it can do those things, just as an example.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
All right. Well, I feel satisfied that I've got some feedback to bring back.
Great.
We're not going to cover it all tonight, but it
Yeah,
it just picking away at this stuff can make a big difference.
Absolutely, I agree. And so the other thing that we had talked about earlier, just to sort of like put a bow on everything, we were going to, maybe I think that the next step for that first piece of the conversation around the property maintenance and what have you would be for me to like maybe pick Travis's brain about what he and Mitch had already done. So that we don't end up, as I think Kristen mentioned, like just recreating the wheel.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and then maybe we even have like a nice solid foundation to move forward
Well,
from.
if you email him, if that's how you're picking his brain,
Mhm.
you could copy me.
Yep.
And then I'll have, because I'll be able to access all the stuff that Mitch has in the files and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
I feel
absolutely.
like they did so much, and I feel like there's gotta be a lot of information on the Google Drive that they compiled. Erica, you must remember, he brought this up at meetings over the years, like, oh, I've created a folder, blah, 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 here with all this information or something, you know? I mean, he's gotta have a lot of stuff on there.
But like you were saying, I think it's sometimes it's hard to sift through where.
Yeah, it is dense, but I feel like, yeah, definitely reach out to Travis. I feel like he's got, that was his pet project. He spent a lot of time on that, so.
Great, well,
I feel like that was very valuable, and I'm sure that this will become more clear, so we can keep checking in, and I'll try and bring information from the task force and to you guys and back to them, and hopefully we'll get somewhere and conserve some land. We've already done our part, right? We voted in favor of the Shelburne Summit parcel, and
that's right.
Yeah, that was awesome.
yeah.
Still is awesome. It's still in progress.
It continues to be awesome.
Continues to be
All right. Cool. Well, thank you everybody for being super efficient and forward thinking about all of that stuff. That's all really important work to get done. It looks like these enforcement updates, anything here?
No, but
Okay.
I do have some updates for the project monitoring section.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so on the project monitoring correspondence site visiting scheduling list, I just wanted to update you guys. Like I told you, I'm like going back through and orienting myself with where everything is at. So the one at the top has an expired order of conditions. And that person, Mitch, was trying to get in touch with, and he's completely MIA.
Mm.
I've tried to get in touch with him. Mark Stinson has tried to get in touch with him. It's just like an empty void. So I reached out to the engineer for the project, and he's retired. I talked to the people he worked with. There's no as-built plans to just close it out. So now I'm at the stage where I am probably gonna, I guess, reach out to the property owner. It's the big Y, sorry, just to,
Mhm, yeah.
it's the big Y. There was tree cutting and slope restoration work there, I
Oh, like
guess.
back
Right,
here?
you mean,
I think it was right on Route 2,
Yeah,
like
right
right
in
there.
Oh, in the
front.
front,
Oh,
yep.
they
Yeah.
Is there a consultant or who is the applicant?
Big Y.
And Big Y is MIA?
Yeah, this guy Dwight has,
Oh, yeah, Dwight used to come to our meetings.
yeah, Dwight is not getting back to.
Well,
any-
here's a thought. So maybe we could send him an email letting him know that if he has any plans to do any work in jurisdiction again, and there are jurisdictional areas on the Big Y property, he cannot do any work until he closes out that order of conditions.
Well, I did say that to Dwight, but he's the manager. And so the next person, the owner, is not Big Y. It's like Robar Inc.
Mhm.
And so I was gonna reach out to them and say the same thing.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it should
I
be
think they'll get
attached to the deed, like,
Yeah, I think that, I mean, they're the owner, they're the ones that are gonna face the repercussions. so
it should
that-
be the ones who have signed, like, who signed the actual NOI application? As a property owner.
That, and Dwight, I think they both did. But anyway, so that's that. That's where that's at. It's the only one on there that's expired. So just so you know, I am addressing
Okay.
it.
Well, they'll have to close it out eventually if they want to do any more work. And I
Yeah.
feel like they did come before us, right, Erica? Like
Yeah.
a couple
they've
years
done
ago.
projects. I think this was, and they've already done the one that was lower, closer to the gas station. I think they were gonna do some on the upper part.
So
the other-
should we have
on the other side.
not, were we not supposed to issue a new order of conditions if they still had an open order of conditions? Or is this the open order of
It might
conditions?
be all the same project.
Okay,
Same
because you're not
project.
supposed to have you're not supposed to have an open order and then issue a new order. You're supposed to close that out before you issue a new order.
I didn't see any
Well, I thought
record from Mark say, like,
The-
usually I've seen him say that a bunch of times, like.
Yeah,
why
he's
is-
good about that, yeah.
Yeah.
The first part was closed out when they made the rain garden and all that stuff, remember?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
This is
Was-
Another one.
I thought that was closed out and then they opened this new one because they wanted to do some work on the upper part.
Yeah,
like on the
maybe,
other side of
yeah,
the
maybe I'm
driveway.
wrong about the
But
the
I mean, I could
location
be
on the
wrong.
property.
I thought when I was on the commission, they came before us to do some like tree trimming along that stream that goes right along Route 2,
Mhm.
along the Route 2, the west side of Route 2, I guess.
Like,
I know, I'm like, where that's north, yeah, so like the west side of Route 2, like northwest side of Route 2, like right on like the Big Y side, not the Home Depot side.
Well,
Remember
when I
that?
reached out to the engineering company, well, even the guy who retired, he's like, it's done. It's ready to be closed out. So I
So
just
maybe
need to
it's-
reach out to the
Oh,
owner.
okay.
Maybe it's
And
the
have-
rain garden one then.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because they did put a retaining wall, remember that was down near they did put a retaining wall there.
I don't remember that. That was maybe
That's
before
kind of
my
where
Maybe
my
they've already
knowledge
been
on this
done.
project ends.
And they found it was flooding down there, so they did make a curb cut and for a rain garden.
If you do get in touch with them, Jessica, just remind them that they need to also have it recorded at the Registry of Deeds.
Yeah, got it. So the next project I wanted to discuss, just 208 Mohawk Trail. I just, I was like, I'm gonna go by and take a picture.
Is this all these or-
So I just, yeah, it's all D. I'll share my screen.
Oh, that's what it is.
Oh,
These are just photos. I just figured, we'd look at them. So I went by last Friday, so before the warmth, so the snowbanks are high, there's McDonald's. You can see the,
Yeah, that silt fence looks
yeah, silt
pretty.
fence is
absent.
disappearing. This was where they had like driven over it. It does kind of look like maybe they put it back up here, cause I don't think a car can fit through that. But, it's still disappearing. Maybe they just put the stake back. I don't know.
Yeah, they need to repair that silt fence.
Yep.
It
Uh,
looks like snow damage.
So yeah, just giant snow piles.
Was that
That's,
one of our things, Kristen, when we permitted it, about where they were gonna put snow?
I can't remember. You're so good at remembering that stuff, Erica. I can't remember. We should look at the plans though, because we were specific about snow storage. I do remember talking about that.
so this is like an exposed stockpile.
Oh,
Cause see that,
Oh,
that's like,
God.
that's soil.
Yep.
yeah,
Been
yeah.
a constant issue with this particular site and they
Yeah.
keep telling us that they've dealt with it.
Right.
And lo and behold,
Well, we can issue we can issue an enforcement order, a cease and desist, if they're continuing to disregard our comments. And by the way, in hindsight, and I just want to say this again, when we have a complicated project that's this close to resource areas, we should ask for a third-party review. And it is on the applicant's expense. And they can make recommendations, things like we should have maybe asked for, weekly or storm SWIP inspection reports. We kind of messed up, I think, with this application. We could have asked for a lot more that was within our rights and we didn't, and they're really taking advantage of that.
Yeah. I agree.
We
And you
since
have 'em-
I've joined the commission, we've never asked for a third-party review.
And you have them where you want them, you know, when they're asking for a permit.
And it's very common to ask for a third-party review for a very complicated project in resource areas or in jurisdiction. And this would have been the perfect example. At the very least, we should have been getting SWIP inspections. I don't know what I was thinking, because I think I was on the commission and I just didn't think of it, but this is on us. I feel like this was on us. But if we have repeatedly reached out to them and asked for, compliance, and they're consistently ignoring our requests, we could issue an enforcement order or a cease and desist and get them into compliance with their orders of conditions, because it looks like they're out of compliance.
But I do, like, even though this is exposed,
Is it in buffer?
yeah, this is the stream right here, and this is the thing.
Yes.
But this silt fence, as much as it looks tattered, nothing is gonna go over that. It, like, I went there before snow, it was really dug in. So
But the soil pile is so high, so
It is.
usually, I know you just sent me the boilerplate, I haven't read it yet, but, and I have to get familiar with their
you should
boilerplate, general
bookmark it.
conditions.
Put it on your
Right.
bookmarks
It's supposed
toolbar.
to-
I know, I'm sorry. Usually there's something in there that says, like, if the soil gets halfway or a quarter of the way up the silt fence, you have to manually excavate it out. That soil pile is really high next to a really short silt fence, and we're about to get into the freeze thaw season. It's really close to that silt fence, and that silt fence is super janky. I'm not
Yeah,
confident in that erosion control measure.
yeah, so what do you think will happen? It will just spill and spill until it like knocks it over, or?
Yeah, it's gonna either blow it out, or it's gonna build all the way up to about 3/4 of the way up and then just fold it over, and it's gonna, I don't know. I mean, are we, given the level of preventative maintenance that their contractors have been exhibiting so far, are we confident that they're gonna be on top of things in the spring thaw?
No, not at all.
Not even remotely.
So
I'm not even confident if I go over there and like reiterate that they'll.
do we want to issue another letter saying, we have been paying attention to you and these are the conditions that you're not meeting, you're out of compliance. We're very concerned about the spring. I don't know how we would want to word that, but, and then if you don't comply within X date, there will be a cease and desist.
Do we have documentation of our previous polite requests for them to conform to the agreement that they made with us?
I'm sure you must be.
I brought like a site visit. Kind of like summary, because I did the site visit with Mark. And we like verbally talked
We
about it.
also have it on
and then-
recording when they came into the call.
Yeah, and
that-
then I brought the summary, so that's probably the only paper trail, because everything else has been verbal, like me going over there and being like, oh, you need to like do this.
Okay. Do you feel like what we have is sufficient to stop them?
Down. I don't know.
Okay.
It's
So
over my-
2 things, I would say, 1, after every site visit, if you notice something that's not in compliance, follow up with an email saying, hey, I visited your site, this was not in compliance,
Okay.
button that up ASAP. And if I come by again and that's not addressed,
Okay.
we're gonna have an issue, just to like document your observations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then 2, let's just like revisit the order of conditions and the special conditions and the general conditions. And if there's anything that's out of compliance right now, there's nothing that we have to worry about. They're out of compliance or out of compliance. So if they have a 40-foot high or a 20-foot high or whatever soil stockpile, and it says in our orders that if that's going to be exposed for more than 14 days, it has to be covered with some kind of like a material, and it's
That
not.
is for
they're
sure
out of
in there.
compliance, like,
Yeah.
That is for sure in there.
So
yeah,
I can go back through my notes and figure out what the timeline was with, all my site visits are dated on these photos, but I feel like the only time I actually handed them like a paper, like this is what needs to be done. I only did that once. Every other time we went there was just a verbal, like, oh, you need to address this, you need to address this. So this is a good learning experience for me of just creating, even if I have a verbal exchange, following up with an email.
All of us, we should have done a
You know,
third party review, I think, on
Yeah,
this. permit.
absolutely.
Yeah, all of us.
I mean, that's the main takeaway, I think, is the third party, but also just, this is a learning experience for me of how to have a paper trail.
And they should be giving us SWIP inspections. I honestly don't remember what happened during this permit review process where I was at with this, but we should be getting SWIP inspections. They-
Special conditions, this is their order of conditions. Special conditions under the Greenfield Wetlands Protection Ordinance, Wetlands Protection Act. 1, a SWIP shall be submitted to the Conservation Commission prior to construction. BMP operations and maintenance logbook shall be kept and maintained throughout the project. A report on the restoration plan progress shall be submitted to the commission once a year for the first 2 years.
I was thinking like, if we required the applicant to submit, so they have to do a SWIP because there's more than 1 acre of soil disturbance. But if we required them, and we should be doing this with all applicants, to do like a SWIP inspection from a third party inspector, not their contractor.
Hey, Kristen.
Sorry?
Camera?
Yeah, that's right. My camera's not on. You can't see me.
She's been like
So-
waving her arms.
Like, here, this is their general conditions under the Wetlands Protection Act. Overall conditions. I'm gonna skip to number 2 because it's in bold. Violation of any condition may result in enforcement action. Number 3, work shall be halted on the site if an agent of the commission or DEP determines that any of the work is not in compliance with this order of conditions. We have already just determined that they are not in compliance. And Jessica is an agent of our commission.
Yeah.
Well, and
So-
you determined that before, and you were nice enough not to shut them down that time. You gave
Yeah.
them a
Yeah.
you gave them verbal warnings,
Yeah.
and they didn't,
So should I send a certified letter? And
That I don't.
Well, here's the thing. So no soil is actually migrated to a resource area yet.
yeah,
It's just that they're being sloppy, right? Or am I wrong?
No, their pile is required to be covered,
Okay,
and I don't believe that snow counts.
yeah, okay.
Sorry, not to be, I was actually serious, like, I don't think that counts, but.
Gotcha. No, I agree with that. I agree. And that, yeah, so they're out of compliance. But just to go back to what I was saying, is we could require in the future that an applicant or their contractor hire a third-party inspector to supply the Conservation Commission with a stormwater report every time it rains a 1/4 inch or a weekly general inspection report during construction as part of their SWIP inspections. And as far as I know, we haven't really been doing that, but we are totally within our rights to ask that.
all right, so what should I do?
At this point, I feel like Liz is right. They're out of compliance, at least for covering that soil pile.
Should I just send an email saying you're out of compliance, like this needs to happen, and the next step is a stop order?
So I guess I might lean on Eric, because I don't know the protocol for enforcement.
Okay, I'll lean on Eric.
well, and maybe ask, we should have gotten some of those reports, right?
Mm-hmm,
So I think you could, in that email, say you were supposed to provide, I want it now.
mm-hmm.
And because I bet they
Well,
haven't done it,
The
so.
only reports, they're just supposed to keep a log on site, so that's not to us.
Yeah, but
You
I'm
could ask
pretty
for a copy of
sure
it.
We
Exactly.
have the SWIP,
the pre-SWIP.
the pre-SWIP.
What was the first
And then
one?
the other one was, once a
Restoration.
year, they need to, update us on the restoration plan, which I don't even know if that started.
Well,
Yeah.
but like Kristen said, the logbook, you could ask them, I want a copy of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Cause I bet they haven't been keeping it.
I bet they haven't been doing it either. The super should be doing a daily inspection of the erosion controls, fixing things as needed. managing snow so that, you know, during freeze thaw, it's not just all like, you know, they should never be plowing snow over the erosion controls. And I don't know if that's anything that's happened. I'm not accusing them
It
of that,
didn't look
but
like, it didn't look like any snow piles were over the silt.
okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, we could ask them for, you know, give them a timeline to come into compliance. And if they don't come into compliance by that timeline, and I don't know if that's a week or 5 days or 2 days, but then there'll be an enforcement order and a cease and desist. This isn't the first time you've talked to them, right?
Yeah, and this might be the only one, I mean, that would hit them money wise, right? They
Mhm.
would, stopping work would have them in cost.
It would,
Yeah.
it would
And that's
forestall the
right,
opening.
and so
date.
that was.
So
that's
we
the only way
can, we
that it's
can
gonna-
stop them, we just can't fine.
Absolutely.
But that's-
Absolutely.
Yep.
They're
Yeah.
not losing money because.
They're out of compliance with their permit. Yeah.
I'd say, chaps my backside as that man came in here and told us
Mhm.
to our faces that it was
That-
taken care of.
Yeah.
Right, Yes.
Yeah. He didn't know what he was talking about.
Well,
Um,
that's at the
okay.
side.
And it was. one of
So
them
I'll
that-
report back on that. The next one I wanted to talk on was the last one I'm gonna talk on tonight is the trail maintenance at Highland Park.
Mhm.
That was over the summer. It was a local NOI, I believe. And they needed to get you guys approved it, but the city needed to get a letter from the NHESP or whatever it's
Yeah, so there's a bunch of rare plants.
because it is in priority habitat. And they've been struggling ever since. And so I just had a meeting with Christy Moore and Kelly Jenkins. And I have been playing phone tag with this guy, Tim McGuire from the Department of Fishery and Wildlife. So he's gonna help me understand what we need, because basically he doesn't have enough specifics. The Appalachian Mountain Club person that came and spoke, she didn't have any like drawings, and that was brought up in the meeting, like what exactly do you want to do to restore the trails? And she said there'd be some hand dug channels to help direct the water, maybe water bars, and then even like rerouting the trail in certain areas, but there was no like plans or even specific mapping, you know. There was a lot of photos, but even the photos that were provided had titles that didn't match the locations on the map,
Mhm.
right? So that is a clear place where we could like communicate better with the Tim McGuire about what the project is, but I think he wants even more specific, since like, well, we're not working with an engineer. So I asked him for an example of what he's gotten from other trail maintenance projects. It's like simple trail maintenance. It's not, I mean, the rerouting the trail, I think, is probably more worrisome for him because it's priority habitat, but the water bars and like the simple like little water channels shouldn't be as crazy. I'm sure they get that a lot. But one thing that came up for Christy is that they want to do other things on the trails, like put up posts saying, you know, this way to like this trail, you know, this distance that way.
Mhm.
And then some maybe markers and stuff, and how, because it's priority habitat, you know, how do they just do simple stuff to improve the trails
Mhm.
and have to go through this process every time, 'cause you know. And I guess the Appalachian Mountain Club person is a little like frustrated with how long it's taken to get nowhere.
Mhm.
And the citizen that acquired funding for the project is also frustrated about how it's just like hit a wall. Because I guess it's been going on since 2022.
So
And-
I don't actually. you
Actually,
know?
Green and Greenfield, they dealt with, or who was it? Erica, with the Nancy, and they were dealing with Carol Frost from Natural Heritage, who's a botanist. Because if it's in priority habitat, not estimated habitat, it's for rare plants.
Was that this project? Or,
I thought that was the Green River area. They wanted to like manage knotweed and stuff. Remember that?
Yeah, no, that's not what this
yeah,
is.
that one.
So it's a different project, but like,
This was a young
Investigating.
woman and some other person who came in and they were talking about I remember the water bars because it was the first time I had ever heard of such
Yeah.
a thing.
Yeah, and so because we've been playing phone tag, we're due to have an actual conversation over the phone, because I just, like, this can't be a new request for them, right? Just at
Right.
hiking trails, but I get it, because he needs more specifics, so we're not like digging around in like
Right.
endangered species.
Right.
Right, not
You know,
digging
Yeah,
up
and
the
like the rerouting of the trail part, like if that was
Trees?
just pulled from the plans, would it help move the project forward? So anyway, that's where that's at. I'll keep you guys updated about like how that conversation goes and if we can get this moving forward.
Yep.
cool. Thank you.
Indeed. So, yeah,
I was thinking, sorry.
no, that's okay. Cool. You've been busy.
I've been busy.
All right, do we have any final comments, questions? Concerns? Not hearing any. Fun fact, I was reading through the MACC stuff and I am not permitted actually to, the thing that we need to do to end the meeting.
Adjourn?
Yeah, no,
make a motion?
make a motion, that's the one.
Oh.
Wait, no, you can motion. You can motion
not.
though.
I am not allowed to motion as the chair.
I thought there was something about that. I don't know why. I think it's weird, but.
I feel like because I join a lot of Concom meetings, because, that's my job,
just
and I
read
feel like
today.
the chair motions all the time. The agent can't motion, but the chair can motion.
I wouldn't be able to find it right now to save my life, but I know for sure, I was like reading, I was looking for something else. And I came across that and I was like, God, I remember that because we had this
Yeah.
conversation a couple times, so I cannot actually.
Oh
motion.
my gosh, I don't, well, either I don't believe it or I've been misled for a
Oh.
long time by other people who don't know the rules.
Are
All
some of us
motion.
going to the MACC, the conference on the 1st? Because we can ask, probably.
Yeah, that would be a
Get
great
10
thing to
answers.
ask.
I can't because I have another work thing I'm doing,
Yeah.
Me too.
so.
I might.
I'm
I'm
gonna
going.
try and make it.
I'm going.
Excellent. Maybe
Good.
we can ask.
Yeah.
Yes, please. So all that having been said, at this point, I'm not going to make the motion.
I will happily motion to adjourn because that is my move.
Great.
I'll second.
Oh, I didn't know I didn't realize I didn't realize you would.
I'm so fast, Erica.
All right, so vote, Emily,
Aye.
Kristen,
I.
Eric,
Aye.
I am also an aye. That concludes this meeting of the Greenfield Conservation Commission on February 25th, 2025 at 8:34 PM. Our next meeting will be on the 11th of March.